All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we have an incredibly special guest, Arthur Sharif, on the show from Silicon Valley. Arthur, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Jere, thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So before I ask you any questions, I want to make sure everybody who's listening to this on video or someplace where they don't get to hear the intro knows who we're asking questions of today. So everybody, Arthur is in Silicon Valley. He's with Sotheby's International Realty. You've been with Sotheby's International Realty, I think, longer and sold more real estate than anybody in Sotheby's. And you hold the highest sale record for Santa Clara. And you have to remind me the other
San
Mateo. Yes, I remembered. San Mateo, as well as you were the first real estate agent in the country to sell a home for $100 million, like to hit that price point at all. Yeah. And you have sold more land, according to MLS anyway, in Silicon Valley than any other real estate agent. That's who we're talking to today, everybody. So thank you.
Thank you for that introduction.
So Arthur, give us what, why, how did you become a real estate agent?
I became a real estate agent because there was a passion in me from a very early age. I used to live in Atlanta, and when I lived in Atlanta on weekends, I would go and tour all these high-end homes off of, in Sandy Springs and East Cobb and some of those neighborhoods, and just looking at them just made me happy, and I've always done that. As far as how I literally got into it, I was actually a retailer. I owned a chain of clothing stores throughout Los Angeles, and I found myself designing my own retail storefronts, and there was a passion for me, and that led to a more of an interest in the design of them. And after many, many years, I owned up to 11 stores. And my brother, who was a real estate developer, asked me to join his company because he felt like that's where I needed to be. And so I got into real estate, not in sales, but in development. We developed a lot of stuff in South Florida, and the way I got into and I've got my real estate license there. But the reason that I wound up in real estate sales where I am today is because I had cancer when I was in Florida, so I wanted my wife and my 3 kids to be close to my family here in Northern California. And so we packed up and we came here. And one of the reasons, another reason why we came here is because Stanford University kind of detected it where, maybe 6 or 8 other doctors weren't able to detect it. And so I felt like, okay, I need to be here. And then the process of, going back and making sure that everything's fine required me to be here. And my sister, Catherine, who was selling real estate locally, I helped her because, I knew all the things about, how to make something look good and knew how to work with contractors and stuff. And I got into sales. Soon after, we formed this partnership. She left to go to LA to join Sotheby's there. But I stayed, and I'm the longest serving Sotheby's agent in the San Francisco Peninsula. And I've never really worked for any other company, so I don't know, what it's like to work for any other company. But when I visit other brokerages for meetings or picking up keys or whatever, I just see that the Sotheby's brand is just head and shoulders above. And that makes me feel good because I've always gravitated towards, the best things in life in terms of, material things where, you buy the best and you expect the best from it.
So you've got a whole line of what I'm hearing is, well, I know a few things about you. So, but here's to rephrase what you just said. You kind of sort of fell in to being a real estate agent because you were in a situation where you had been an entrepreneur. Atlanta, LA, Florida, you're in Florida with family, and then suddenly life takes a turn and you're not sure what's going to happen. And I'm not sure like how long I'm going to live. And this is survival mode now.
Exactly.
And Stanford was the only place that really had the resources to help you. So you pretty much got to live there.
Yes, I had to go back, first it was chemo, then radiation, then, monthly appointments. And then, so it was very intense in terms of having to be here.
You weren't setting out to be the first guy to sell $100 million property, or maybe you were, but I don't think you were setting out to survive, not to sell $100 million property.
No, you never do that. It's, I wasn't trying to find the most beautiful girl in the world when I met my wife, but it just happens, so certain things just happen. If you,
I think it just happened to everybody.
It happens more than, opportunities are there. You just have to recognize them, I think. And I recognize opportunities. Everything that I've done, I didn't look at what was there. I looked at what was possible, what could be there.
I didn't look at what was there. I looked at what was possible and what could be there.
Exactly.
So first of all, so you come to Stanford, you come in, and when you got into real estate, you started out in development with your brother.
Yeah.
And that evolved into supporting your sister as an agent. And give us kind of like what that was like in the beginning and how that evolved, because it's such a drastic difference and it's an intro, but you came a long way.
Yeah, but that's something that I've, I feel like I'm a serial entrepreneur. I look at opportunities. I've done so many different things through my life that starting something new is just second nature. And I always look at it. I look at it like the way that that my oncologist, my response to my oncologist, I asked her, I said, am I going to be okay? And she looked at me, she goes, do you think you're going to be okay? And I said, because if you think you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay. I'm like, if that's the case, we're going to be just fine here because I know I'm going to be okay. And I think that that's the way I approach everything in life. It's like, okay, this is not a challenge. This is an opportunity. And if it's up to me, we're going to be just fine. And that's the way I approach just everything. Some agents, they run away from luxury properties because it takes time or it takes too much energy or effort or capital or whatever. I run towards it because that's, to me, it's not just a challenge, it's an opportunity.
What you just said, I love, because in all of my time and meeting so many real estate agents and meeting so many masterminds and whatnot, the real winners, the guys who are doing what you're doing, the one thing I say again and again, and you literally, and I promise I wasn't leading the witness, was you said it, is it's in how you see what's happening. That's it. Everybody's got stresses. Everybody's got, and the more you successful are, guess what? The more you've actually got to lose. Exactly. But the more successful you are, the more, it's not like you get successful and then you see opportunity. It's the more you saw the opportunity to create it before it ever happened. And you continue to do that to propel success.
Right. And it goes to everything. Like it's so true in real estate because a home, unless it's brand new, it's very personalized, right? It's personalized to the former or the current owner's tastes and budget and all of those things. So when you look at it, you have to be able to look at it and say, hey, that's a blank slate, and what do I see there? What do potential other buyers might see, what they may not see. So you turn those challenges, and I tell this to like young agents and say, there is no home that you and I like or dislike. We don't like or dislike anything. We look at it and say, who is this home perfect for? Some people are like, oh, this house only has 2 bedrooms. I'm like, yeah, some people, they only want a 2-bedroom house and they have 7 acres and the home is 8,000 square feet because that's all they need. And so it's about need and it's not about, what is norm.
Exactly. So question for you. We're going to move on, but not yet. I want to start talking, like, honing in on this challenges, opportunities, and change and success in your life. There's 2 directions that I see this. In one direction, we're going to get the story of that $100 million sale and your success. But before we go there, let's go back to Arthur and who Arthur was as a kid, who Arthur was as an entrepreneur before, because you've been a real estate agent for how many years?
I think that's 17, maybe.
I mean, you kind of found you got a good thing going here for a while, but it's not because you went and found a job and didn't quit or just stuck with it for 20 years. It's because of these dynamics of who you are and how it became. So take us back to the beginning, Arthur.
Yeah, and this is the longest I've ever done anything, and it hasn't been continuous, actually. So I've always been, as I said, a serial entrepreneur. I got my first taste of entrepreneurship when a friend of mine whose brother owned a sweater factory in New York gave us a bunch of seconds, like factory seconds, or like things that can't go to Macy's because they have some kind of a blemish or imperfection. Well, we loaded up these trunks of these cars and we drive to, from University of Georgia to Georgia Tech to West Georgia to all the colleges around the area, and we would sell these sweaters to these sorority houses, and we'd have like a trunk show right there in the main room, and we were doing great because we were making money, but more importantly, it was fun. It was fun because the people that were getting the most fun out of it were the customers. They were just like, giddy about getting such a product at such a price. So that kind of opened up for me an avenue where, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And so when it came time to doing other things, I was the same way. I used to buy cars in Frankfurt, Germany, and drive them to Bremen, Germany. And from Bremen, Germany, I put them on the ship to Jacksonville, Florida. From Jacksonville, Florida, I bring them up to Atlanta and fix it and sell it. These were like convertible Mercedes and Porsches and things like that. And what it did was, it was extremely fun, but economically, it paid for my European vacation, if you will. So I've done that, that brought on an interest and a passion for cars. In my first month in the car business, I used to sell office equipment, personal computers when they were just an infant industry, but I was running from one place to another and racking up traffic tickets. And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, why don't you sell cars? You can make the same money." I'm like, "That's crazy. I've got an education. I need to use that." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And so, but anyway, he talked me into it. I worked at, didn't even want to hire me. The manager at the Boomershine Pontiac on Cobb Parkway, he said, "I'm only hiring you for one reason, because your buddy asked me to hire you. We don't do training here. You see this pen? That's your training. Make sure you use that." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'm just happy for the opportunity." That first month, I was the salesman of the month at that dealership. Soon after, I was promoted to a manager. Then they asked me to become a general manager. But by this time, I was married. My wife and I wanted to, move out west to California. We vacationed there. We had a honeymoon there. Had family here. So we decided to move out west. And as soon as we moved out west, I was like, I need to open my own business. I was almost ready to open my own business in Marietta. But we decided to move.
That's Atlanta, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you what?
So we decided to move. And so I said, all I'm going to do is work somewhere for about a year or two, figure it out, and then find a place where I can open my own business. So I went to not trying to bore you with a lot of detail, but I wound up with W.I. Simonson Mercedes-Benz in Santa Monica, California. I told at my as I walked into dealership, I said, "I'm here to be your top salesperson." And he looked at me.
Love that.
He goes, "That's weird." He goes, "I just lost my top salesperson. I wouldn't give you the time of day." And I said, "Well, maybe it's meant to be. All I'm asking you is just give me a chance, and you'll be happy you did." He says, "Okay, fine." So I started working there, and the first year, I was not the top salesperson. I was the second top salesperson.
Oh, well,
The second and third years, I was one of the top Mercedes-Benz salespeople worldwide in the United States, Canada, all over the world. We were sent to Stuttgart to shake hands with the CEOs and all that. But that wasn't my passion, right? My passion was, and I'm very goal oriented and not getting lost in all of this. My goal was to open up my own business. But with the dollars that I had, the only business that I could open up was a business that required low capital, little capital, or I would have opened up a car dealership or whatever else. I saw this is a real estate play. I saw this food court in a mall in Santa Monica where tourists by the thousands, and there was one store that was closed. And I said, would that be a perfect place for a restaurant? Never worked in a restaurant, don't know restaurant business. I don't know anything about restaurants, but I'm like, that would be a perfect place for a restaurant. But I look around, this is one of the best food courts probably in the country, and they have every kind of food imaginable to man. So you couldn't just go to them and say, hey, listen, I want to open up a pizza. There's like 3 pizza places. And so, and I thought like quick on my feet, I'm like, that would be a wonderful place for an Indian restaurant. The mall said, an Indian restaurant just went out of business in that spot. I'm like, and thinking on my feet.
What is it with you?
I said, I know why that Indian restaurant went out of business. And they're like, why? I said, because Indians were running it. They were making the food too much for an Indian palate. I said, I think that we take that food, bring down the heat a little bit, make it more friendly to an American palate, and you'll see success there. And then they, your qualifications and all of this. But anyway, I just kind of pushed my way through, and they said, okay, fine. It did so well that we were being accosted by malls all through Southern California. But I knew that wasn't my passion, and it wasn't the vehicle that's going to take me where I wanted to go. So during that time that I was in the mall, I'm walking around. I'm like, what? I used to sell the sweaters out of the back of a car. I got some retail experience. I could open up a nice men's clothing store because there's no store in this mall that I would shop in. And so I went back to the same leasing office. I'm like, I've got a great idea. I'm like, not again. I'm like, yep, again. I said, what we need to do is we need a nice men's clothing store in this mall. And they're like, what do you know about that? I'm like, I wear them every day. Anyway, they said no. So I went across the street and found another location. And then I came back to the leasing manager, and I said, listen, I'm going across the street to open a store because you're not going to give me one. But I want you to review this lease for me and tell me that, if it's a good lease. She looked at me, she goes, you just won't give up. I'm like, I can't. She said, okay, I'm going to give you a store. So she gave me a store that turned into, like I said, 11 stores. I divested from the restaurant business, got into that. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, that developed into designing storefronts, which went into the development business, which wound up in the real estate sales.
I'm writing those down so I remember, because at about 11 stores, you've had the lifetime of not even that many people. You were just getting started.
I hired thousands, and I had my own labels. I go to Brazil to source footwear. My footwear was so good that I had buyers from Nordstrom coming into my stores buying stuff to take back to and this is the honest truth, to copy some of the things that I would bring in.
Okay, so first of all, you started all of this with one statement. You said, and this was a while back before I even asked you about your history, you said, I see where there are challenges, I see opportunity. I don't see what isn't. I see what could be and what can be. So
Exactly.
then you have this joy of selling sweaters out of back cars when you're younger. And now you go in and because there's so many, I actually lost track, but you go into, was it car sales first?
Importing the cars from Germany.
So importing the cars from Germany because you need your European vacation.
Exactly.
I love it. I mean, and the links, and here's the other thing, everybody, the links that you go to do it, but the outcomes are still always greater. Back to, no wonder you sold the first $100 million property in the country. Number two, car sales. So then you go to it, you were top in a dealership, then you go to another dealership and you just, not arrogantly, but candidly, you're looking to be their top salesperson and you're seeing an opportunity and you're making sure you create one. And then you do that and you're like, well, this isn't really for me. And then you see a restaurant and you realize they're missing a restaurant and an Indian restaurant would be great. And the one that failed, most people would say, well, something's wrong. That's a problem. Next.
Yeah, and so you can't have inhibitions about, some people would argue that, you're one of the top Mercedes-Benz salespeople, and now you're, dishing out curry, and people coming up to you, and you're looking like in their eyes, like, what are they going to ask me? And then the first question out of their mouth is, do you speak English? And I'm like, yeah, So,
what a life experience.
Yeah, so it humbles you, but they don't know your story, and so you give them the pass, and but you gotta be comfortable with who you are, and not allow anybody else to kind of dictate who you are.
Or define who you are.
Yeah.
What a great, and perhaps that is one of the reasons why those people who go through some of the biggest struggles or experiences in life are those people. It's opportunity has a lot to do with, opportunity could be there, but you've got to show up for it.
You have to show up for it. I mean, I had people that would come to this mall that were my clients at the Mercedes-Benz dealership, and they're like, look at you, and they like have this like,
they're confused.
Sorry for your look. I'm like, don't worry about me. I'm fine.
No, this is good. This is like, I wanted to do this.
Exactly. But it's just, but you can't, and those are the things that every experience in life teaches you for the next, and prepares you for the next experience in life.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you because I have a question about that.
Yeah. So everything that I've learned, I've used in a later part of my life.
So a question for you.
The point, from the sweaters to working in malls to selling copy machines to selling everything.
Well,
it's just
it's like the Steve Jobs quote: "You look backwards and all the dots suddenly like it's so obvious." So, like example, I love how you brought us there when you're talking about you're working at the mall at the Indian restaurant that you had started, and this was an entrepreneurial act, but it wasn't perceived that way by others. So you have these experiences where people are like, do you speak English? And there's just this kind of like, almost, you could experience it demeaning, but for you, it was enlightening. Now take that, and now fast forward to your career today and doing things like holding sales records and selling the first $100 million property in the country. You saw things other people didn't see, good or bad, and you didn't let what they saw impact who you really were and what opportunity really was, or define it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I love about Silicon Valley is that it's a meritocracy here, and everybody is from somewhere, and all they want to know, where I used to live in LA. In LA, it's it's what you drive or what you wear or what kind of jewelry you wear, and here it's like the first thing people are like, where'd you go to school? And so it's a totally different. That vibe is so cool that I thrive in that environment because it's about what are you doing? What can you do? And so when I'm selling, I'm not selling anything, because the best things that I always have heard throughout my life from people is like, you're not like a salesperson, which is the biggest compliment you can give to somebody, unfortunately, because I think that I don't know if it's Hollywood or whoever, but that our profession has a little bit of a tarnish on it. But I think that every profession probably has a little bit of it. I mean, lawyers get their share of it as well, right? So you just move on, and you don't think about, you only think about the people. You don't think about price, and that's the thing about luxury. If you're intimidated by price, then the trouble is not with the industry; it's just with you. You got to get out of that shell.
Oh, the problem's
Right?
not with industry. If you have a problem with price, the problem's not with the industry. It might be with you, and that's not an accusational judgment. That's just
No, it's
a
just something
check.
to work on. It's just something you need to work on. And so when this current week, I was fortunate enough to be called to an interview for a $20 million listing, and my first question one of my first questions is, hey, why me? Why did you call me instead of somebody else? And he looked at me. He goes, do you know so and so? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, he's a friend of mine. We grew up together. We went to school together. I'm like, he's one of the absolute top real estate agents in the area. He goes, yeah, I know. So I called him and said, hey, who do you think I should give this to? He said, call Arthur Sharif. I think he'll do a great job for you. And so, I think you win the admiration of your colleagues, and for another colleague to do that for you, instead of saying, hey, let me introduce you to this guy and then try to get a referral fee or anything like that. It just shows you the level of confidence that somebody had in you. And I was blown away that happened.
Well, it also is a reminder in our industry of like the other agents are sure we compete. I say we still, but anyway,
Yeah.
we compete, but really and truly, brokers are allies. We're doing deals with one another.
I tell people during the interview, they say, well, we've interviewed so and so. I said, listen, when we come to your home, we are all competing agents, and we tell you about what we can do. I said, but as soon as you sign the listing agreement, we all become cooperating agents. We all try to sell your home. There is no me versus them. It's we. It's only me until you sign the document. And after I talk to you, my next call is to my colleagues. Those are the folks that are very important to me, and they are the ones that I really count on to help me help you.
I've never heard it put that way. I love, because once you sign, I mean, that almost sounds like
from
you're
competing
supposed
to
to sign.
cooperating.
But understanding, like, when you hire me, now you choose the person you want representing you, but when you hire me, now you bring in the whole community of agents. And the reality is, when you hire the person who has the best relationships in the community, you bring in all the agents.
That's the point, is that if you can convince the seller that you have a stellar reputation among the brokerage community, that should be a huge feather in your cap, if you will.
And you, I've just I'm like, duh, but the way you phrased it is so reinforces the point of why our industry has been so long-standing. It's so long-standing is because when you hire the right agent, you hire the agent who works well with the other agents. Otherwise, you're eliminating yourself from everybody.
Exactly.
And as an agent, it's kind of important to remember that for your own career.
It's really important for me to remember that, because my story is that I was the only Sotheby's agent in the peninsula at one time, the only one. And so when people would go into the listing presentation, their immediate thing was, oh, you don't want him. He's not, his office is in the city. And so I needed to be more cooperative than most of my colleagues, because I was kind of like the Lone Ranger here. But I like to think that my presence here invited the other Sotheby's affiliate brokerages to open brokerages in our community.
Wow. So I mean, so do you think, was that your experience that really drove it home for you and reinforced that? Because it could do one or the other. It could make some people bitter, like Lone Ranger, doing my thing, or is there like a moment or a story where it all came together?
Well, the thing is that we have to remember that every agent, and that's what really kind of gets me when people knock the industry. The industry is not really an industry. It's one of the most loosely knit industries that I know of. Every agent is a small business. So if you like small business, you should love the real estate business because there's thousands of us. We're all small businesses. We don't, pollute. we're,
Well, we drive our cars around, but get a Tesla. I don't
yeah,
know.
exactly. But so we are, and so that's where this whole thing starts. You're a small business. As a small business, if you want to raise, you get in front of the mirror and say, I need a raise, and you go out and get one. You can't rely on your brokerage. You can't rely on anybody. You got to rely on yourself. And when you think about it that way, then yes, it's easy to become a lone wolf type of a person. But really and truly, there's no one that you must rely on. You have to be self-reliant in every sense of the word. Because if you need to run to get advice on everything, then you're just maybe need to work on some of the things that you shouldn't need to, because being an independent business person means you got to be the problem solver no matter what the problem is. And that's what being an entrepreneur, that was like an easy thing. I was like, yeah, I've done that for years.
You're
That's
like,
all I do.
what problem? Opportunities. Mr.
Exactly.
Opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
really. Okay, so I think it was 2012 that the first $100 million property sold in
Yes.
our country, and it was you. You were the broker.
My sister and I.
Your sister, you
Catherine.
and your
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So
What's the
the
story?
the story is this: the owner, husband and wife, they have this $85 million property, and they have another $85 million property in Hawaii. So they called us and they called some other people in, and they said, we have this property, and whichever one sells first, we're going to keep the other one. I'm like, oh no, that's terrible, because you could do all this work and the other house sells first. And then they said, rule number 2, no one can know about this. I don't want it in newspapers, magazines, radio,
Every real
TV.
estate agent's dream.
Right? So I'm like,
we might just not sell it,
yeah, I'm
and
like,
don't let anybody know about it, but sell
yeah.
it.
So because sometimes anyway, we'll go into that later. So anyway, they he said, you can't put it out there. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we knew that it was a ticking clock on two points. And number one is that the other house sells first. Number 2 is, by having our hands tied, he may get frustrated and say, hey, nothing's going on. We need to move on or something. So, but we reached out to the brokerage community, reached out to the brokerage, all the people, and they reach out to us. And so there's one agent who I've done quite a bit of business with, and he said, I've got a client that's like, money is no object. I'm like, yeah, great. He says, oh yeah, this guy will spend 30 million, 25 million. I'm like, well, if he's got 30 million, he doesn't have enough to buy this. He goes, really? I'm like, yeah. I said, this is an $85 million property, and there are 2 lots on either side of it that are $7.5 million each, for a total of $100 million. And so anyway, the people come. I give them this big grand tour, really dramatic, and and then they love it. They absolutely love it. And they did 100 different inspections and all of this. And after all it's all said and done with, they said, we'll give you 95 million. And the owner's like, okay, we'll take that. I'm like, no, if you take that, you have 2 things can happen. Number 1, he'll think that he paid too much. Or number 2, he may just walk away thinking, I just don't, this is just like it's just too easy. Maybe it's just not even, it's not supposed to happen. So we came back with the $100 million, and they said, can you substantiate it? Yes, we can do this. This is the architect, this is this. And anyway, at the end of the day, they said, okay, fine, $100 million. Next thing you know, we're all celebrating and having a great time, and patting each other on the back.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. So a few things. Somebody comes to you, because here's the thing, everybody has their situation. I'm talking a lot about problems today because I love to reinforce the way that everything comes your way you don't, it's almost like you just don't, in a very good way, you don't see no. Or you see the no, but you don't see it as you don't see no as the end, you see no as the door to opportunity.
Exactly, because I'm open to it. I mean, and people around here, they're like, you're so lucky. Let me just rub against you. I'm like, don't do that. They're like, why? I'm like, because if I'm lucky, your luck will come to me and I have too much luck.
Oh my God, like, see, like even that, I was like, because most people are like, why? Because my bad luck will rub on you. No, like you see the luck, you don't see the problem. You see, I love that. Oh
Yeah,
my God, I love that. Well, I think so. I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is, but he says what you see determines on your aim and your focus. You're focusing on, you've got problems and opportunities everywhere. You decide to look and focus on opportunities, and that's what you see. And when you see it, that's what you work with. That's what becomes more and more of your reality, and it perpetuates.
Exactly.
It's not like you haven't had challenges.
No, I've had more challenges than most folks, but it's just an outlook, right? Your positive outlook. It sounds cliche-ish that the glass is half full, but I always look at the positive because I've seen too many. Aristotle said, "We are what we reportedly do." Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. You just be that person, and and it'll happen for you. It's just you just have to be open to it, and the old saying, half or whatever is just showing up. You got to show up, and I show up.
And reiterate what you said, because you show up, but you've got the be positive people. They're just making stuff up in their head because there is reality. And then there's people like in here's what Jere Metcalf is reading and interpreting. You've seen an awful lot of reality. It hasn't all been bright and shiny and beautiful, but you've also seen within that reality the beauty. You don't just see what isn't there. You see what could be and can be, and you hone in on that part of it. And did you learn that somewhere, or because you literally like in everything you hone in on what could be and how to make it happen, and you go at links I think most people would not. Because you're like, oh, okay, well, if that's what I've got to do it, okay, then I'll do that. And you just do that. Where did that come from? Or how did you come about
I think
that?
It's probably from being competitive and not wanting to lose. So I'm a very, very competitive person. I participate, in sports, and in sports, losing is not an option. That's the mentality I always go by. But more importantly, I think it's my personality where I want to please. So if I sell your $100 million home, that makes you happy. If it makes you happy, it makes me happy. And so, and that may be like my biggest trait, in that I love to have fun, and I always get teased about this. Yeah, there's only one person, the person that laughs the loudest at my jokes is me. and sometimes you say, okay, well, if the joke is not infectious, the laugh will be infectious. so I get them to happiness that way. So
I love that. That's so.
I'm like a kid,
like you just said, it's everything you just said. That's so true. I love that. So in your career and or life, what is the biggest lesson and or challenge that you've overcome?
The challenge is nothing is so serious. I tell you this to everybody, like, we're not brain surgeons. If we fail, no one's going to die. So that's the starting point. No one's going to die. So things are not that bad. And so the challenge is that you learn from is like my illness in 2008 when I lost a big chunk of my net worth in the real estate meltdown. Those things, right? For some people it may have been devastating, but for me it was like that. Look in the mirror, like, hey, at least it's not cancer. So, you just have to look and say, things could always be worse. I mean, I had financial problems, and all of these other things, and went to the doctor, and the doctor said, and at that time, the financials, I'm like, this can't get much worse than this. And next thing you know, it's, oh, you have cancer. I'm like, well, I guess it could get worse than this.
Even for Mr. Positive.
Yeah. And so those things teach you to understand what the important things are. And then once you have that, then you don't take anything too seriously. And most importantly, you don't take yourself too seriously. You're not going to be self-depreciating, other than maybe in a joke or something, but you just realize that, hey, everything's going to be okay. All you have to do is just be patient and keep working the process. And the process has proven itself in the past. It'll prove itself again.
Which goes back to excellence in habits.
Yeah.
And what you just said was understand what the important things are.
Exactly.
So there are a couple of quotes that you've given before. Now I'm just remembering one of them. So I'm going to say it. We also are going to do the final three. But before we do the final three, I just want to, because we've talked offline about things, and we talked about when you're working with people, and you've said this in training and working with other people you're mentoring and other agents, and it's not about treating other people the way you want to be treated. It's about treating other people the way you would want them to treat your mother.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. And I've always tried to instill that in my sales training, because I've trained a lot of young people. Some of them even encouraged me to write a book. And like the old saying, the customer is always right. Okay, that's a good thing to live by, right? Another good thing is, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. That's good. But let's take that one step further and say, let's treat everybody the way we want our moms treated. Well, what is the distinction there? The distinction is that there's an extra level of care that you and I don't expect somebody to hand me their seat. But if somebody hands their seat to my mom, it wouldn't shock me. It make me happy, and that person to me is a good person. So treat people in terms of sales. What that means is slow the process down for that person. Respect that person's ability to comprehend at a different level, because you do this every day. They do this once every 20, 30 years, and make sure that they understand. And the way I make my mom understand, because my mom sometimes, I'm like, explain to her, and I'm like, you understand? She goes, yes, I understand. I'm like, okay, if you understand, I want you to explain to me what I just said. Because if she can explain it to me, then I know she can understand. That's the old expression, like the only way somebody knows something is, if your mom can explain it to you after you've explained it to her, then they really understand. And so those are the little things that I always try to live by.
I love it. Okay, we're going to do the final three questions now. Okay. What would you say is the most important or powerful resource in the success of your career?
I think that it's a people business. You have to be a people person. You can't hide behind technology. Technology can be the biggest enemy of a real estate agent. I always make sure I tell you, listen, the number one thing is to call. If they don't want you to call, you text and email or whatever, but your first go-to, your default. I know that a lot of millennials prefer the text and all of that, but communication is key, because there's so much that gets lost. That human interaction is the most important thing. People like that. It's a basic human instinct that's prehistoric, I think.
Communication.
Yeah, verbal communication, face-to-face communication. If you can do it in person, do it in person. If you can't do it in person, do it on the phone, and then everything else follows there. So because all this thing about texting, okay, fine, if that's what they want,
But to your point, when there's the opportunity to be in person, it's, what is it, 95% or 90% of communication is body language, tone, facial expressions, sound, which is tone. But that's it. So much more gets across.
And I used to tell people all the time, when you're talking to people, don't wear sunglasses. Don't put your hands in your pocket. Don't put your hands behind your back. How you stand is important. If your shoulders, your chest out, all these little things that you may not even think about are the most important. They're a lot more important than your haircut.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
So key. This is the next question. Is there a book that you would say you've got to read and is even so much as life or career changing?
I don't think that books are capable of that in general, because I think that it goes back to what I said earlier. You got to repeatedly do something. If you read a book once and put it on the shelf, it's not going to get you where you need to go. So the only books that I think that may do that for you are workbooks that you reference back all the time. I think that to develop good habits, you repeat it. You repeat. Like I read a lot. I mean, I'm a voracious reader. I subscribe to every major publication I think in the country that doesn't overlap each other. And what I look for in that, obviously, I look in the business section so that when I'm talking to somebody, I know what's going on. I'm no expert at it, but I know what's going on. I read a lot of motivation, motivational type things. That's for me. That's food for me. And so that, but I do, right on my desk right now, I have, a dozen books that I'll look through but being a non-clinical diagnosed ADHD or whatever the initials are person, I need to be able to just kind of be all over the place and just soak stuff up. Google is my best friend. Like, if there's no thought that passes through my mind that Google doesn't see, because I want to know. I want to know how, if no matter how silly it might be, I'm like, I want to know what that's all about.
Oh my gosh, like I'm there with you. And it's ADHD or what, if it is ADHD, that's the symptom, because you want to know, and you want to know right now.
Exactly. And so in my home, I'm the doctor. And whenever something happens, it's like, okay, you know what to do. I'm like, yeah.
That's me. That's actually me. Like for every antibiotic, I have the holistic version. I really do. It's like, I won't even go there. All right. Last question. And I have so many Arthur Sharif quotes, and some of them weren't said on the show today, but I will still be sharing them because you have some of the best. So that being said, that kind of leaves me to the last question. If we're going to forget, all of us listening today, everything from this conversation and just remember one thing, what would you hope that one thing is that we take away today?
What is the one thing that you take away from today? That, other than the fact that if you have a Silicon Valley referral, you call me, other than that.
Well, I love that. There's why he's the number one salesman at whatever he's doing, even though you've been an agent for 17 years.
So other than that, and this sounds corny, so full disclosure, I think that you gotta say is, look, here's this guy. He's a middle-aged man. He doesn't belong to the local Rotary Club, which I have in the past in other places. He doesn't belong to the PTA. He doesn't belong on the school board. He doesn't have any political, capital. He doesn't have the church to fall back on. He doesn't have a bunch of kids that he grew up with and their parents and all of that. He doesn't have any of that. He's not the best looking guy, and he's 6'2" and he's overweight at 230. If he can do this, why can't I? And that's the thing that I'm just like, I tell people, I'm like, if I can do this, anybody can do this. And that's really, and you might say, oh, well, you did this, you did that, or whatever, everybody can. But if you believe it, if you really believe it and say, he's got his advantages, but I'm sure I've got mine too. Find those advantages, work those advantages, and you'll be, if your aspiration is to be me, you don't have any high hopes, because you can do better.
Love it. Arthur, thank you so much. It's
My
so good to
pleasure.
see you. It's so awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf